Thank you so very much, and welcome to the 6th Annual Churchills. 6 years ago, we envisioned a very different kind of awards program, one not about self-congratulations, but rather about giving back, inspiring others with important lessons and stories from a human perspective rather than simply a business perspective. Being human is, after all, what truly binds us together. So each year, the Churchill Academy, a group of 700 people who were brought together by the Churchill Club to represent the broader business and technology community, they nominate people, companies, and teams that they believe are the greatest, most shining examples of 4 things that we collectively value, which are leadership, collaboration, social benefit, and innovation. These nominations then go back to the Academy for voting, and that is how we arrive at the selections each year. So, as we listen to the phenomenally accomplished people who are going to be on our stage this evening, it is important to remember that they are here as a reflection of our own aspirations and acknowledgments. Heartfelt thanks to our Academy members. We certainly could not do this. Without that. That is what makes this work. We also wish to express our thanks to the sponsors of this program. First, our innovation champion, Shell. We know from working closely with Shell over the past 6 years how deeply the people there care about the values expressed in this event. Big thanks also to Accenture, McKinsey, Dun & Bradstreet, and Consumer Technology Association for their partnership in presenting the awards. And also to our supporting sponsor, Silicon Valley Bank, especially the inspiring and dedicated leader of our board, Chris Stedman. Thank you also to the Churchill Club staff and volunteers. We are so fortunate to have such a great village. Thank you all. Led by the artist Pam Davis, there is a visual art performance piece happening in the room tonight. Pam and her drawing orchestra are using drawing, photography, and other media to capture fleeting micro-expressions and gestures that reveal the emotions beneath the surface of what is happening at this event. You'll see their works on the screens tonight, and I urge you to visit their station at the back of the room before you leave and see what they have created. It is yet another opportunity to connect with our inner sense of creativity and humanity. And it is now my great pleasure to welcome to the stage Geert van der Wouw, Managing Director of Shell Technology Ventures. Geert.
Thank you, Karen. You're the first American that can properly pronounce my name. That's really nice. I'm delighted to be here, ladies and gentlemen, with you tonight. It's going to be a really good night with, various entrepreneurs and academia and corporates and VCs talking about innovation and entrepreneurship and collaboration. We have been a sponsor of the Churchill Club since 2011, and they've been really wonderful in connecting us with various key stakeholders in the Valley and in San Francisco. This place is a very loud place. You got a lot of opinionated people, and we are only a very small company, right? So we need people like the Churchill Club to get us connected with this ecosystem, and they've been doing a wonderful job at it. Welcome you to this event. We're sponsoring the Innovation Champions event. It's going to be a really good evening. Why are we interested to be connected with you and with other key players in the region? First of all, we have discovered that some smart people have managed to escape working for Shell. And as unfortunate as is, a lot of them work in this area. There's a lot of smart, innovative people working in the startups and the academia in this region, and we're trying to actively reach out to them through various programs that we have in Shell, including my program, Shell Technology Ventures, which is the corporate venture arm of Shell. We also have Game Changers. That's a special group in Shell with people that have brains the size of watermelons, and they really reach out to innovators and inventors that can come up with potentially revolutionary ideas that can change the industry altogether. And I think Marianne Marino is somewhere here in the audience. There she is. This ecosystem is also important because our industry, the energy industry, goes through a couple of formidable transformations. First of all, we're going through an energy transition towards a lower carbon future, which obviously makes companies like Shell's get very interested in new energies, renewable energy solutions, not just on the hardware side, but also more on the customer-facing side. You know, data propositions around the home, distributed energy generation and storage, very much propositions around connected cars and connected customers that we are looking at. We are the second largest power trader in the United States, and increasingly our customers are asking for additional value proposition from our side. So you guys can help us develop those propositions. The second revolution we're going through is, quite frankly, a digitization or digital revolution. You know, as the oil field becomes digitized with new sensors, IoT solutions, big data solutions, robots. We just recently tested a robot to operate an offshore platform in Kazakhstan, which is unmanned because of high H2S concentrations, and really using robots in environments where you really don't want to have people operate for us. As Stevie, we invest in early and late stage energy startups. In the oil and gas domain, but increasingly in the new energy domain, the digital domain. We also do fund-of-fund investments in other venture capital firms in order to get eyes and ears on the ground to really understand who's investing in these ecosystems and why and where. And we invest in spin-outs, and the latter is probably the most difficult thing that you can do as a corporate, to try and spin out new companies from a large company like Shell and create an entrepreneurial environment, and we have been successfully doing so since the late 90s, with several large exits since then. Now, we need partners like you to actually support these startups through that valley of death. The energy industry is an industry that is relatively capital intensive, as you may have noticed, but also you need tenacity in terms of time. It takes simply a lot of time for energy startups to come through that valley of death. It's not like, you know, the next version of Apple's iOS 8 software version, where you can roll it out to billions of customers in a matter of days. No, it takes, 6-8 years for an energy startup to actually scale to a proportion that is meaningful in our industry. We have invested in several startups in this environment. Mana, big data solution. We met with those folks today. Jelly, which is very much a software company connecting energy storage with microgrid systems. I think there's some people from Jelly here in the room. There you go. And also GlassPoint out of Fremont. They are a concentrated solar company. They are now building the largest solar field in the world, a 1 gigawatt plant in Oman. And I can tell you it was quite interesting when we told the original VCs investing in this company that the company had to move its headquarters from Fremont, California to Muscat, Oman. They literally had to take out a Freeman-McNally Atlas of the world to find out where Oman was located. So they are there now. They are established. They are making a lot of progress, and we're happy to see how we can help. Indeed, a small, Bay Area startups to really scale to a meaningful size. Now, we are establishing ourselves more meaningful here in the area. We are looking at office space this week. We're hiring people. We're going to have a small hub in San Francisco, hopefully in the next couple of months. So we'll be able to interface with you a lot more regular. We already have one person on the ground, Bennett Cohen. And, and he's completely overwhelmed, trust me. And I'm looking forward to hear to the various inspiring speakers tonight. As they share their perspectives on the field of innovation and collaboration and entrepreneurship with us. With that, I want to thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.
Now on with the show. It's a big honor to introduce Geoffrey Moore. He is a legend in the industry, and he continues to make enduring contributions to help us better understand and capitalize on disruptive technologies. Let's give our warmest welcome to Geoffrey Moore.
Great. It's great to be here again. This is a pretty special evening every year. And you know, as Karen was saying, the awards, we're going to present 5 awards tonight. And every one of them is going to go to a distinguished individual representing an amazing accomplishment. And our Valley is about achievement, and we really like to honor the achievers in our Valley. But there's a higher purpose to this award ceremony, and that is to activate every one of us in this room to the values that we're awarding. Because a lot has been given to us in this Valley, and it's our job to kind of step up and give it back to the world. And so I love the taglines that the Churchill Club has developed around each one of these awards, because I think we each of us needs to internalize them. So the Game Changer tagline is, you changed how things are done and there's no going back. So you might think to yourself, gosh, in the next year, is there anything I could do in my own local little world that people would say, wow, you changed things for the better and there's no going back? I mean, I think each one of us should say, could I do that next year? Is that, because if you can, you should. You should. Global benefactor. The thing that's cool, the tag here is, thanks for thinking big. Because I think, we all benefact at some level. We all give back at some level. Thanks for thinking big says, we're playing it too small. Most people play their lives too small. You're bigger than that, but it takes risk. And one of the things this Valley's been so good at is taking risk for impact. So your life is your impact agent. I hope tonight you get inspired to take more risk with your life to have a bigger impact, because you can, and we need it, right? The magical team one. The thing is, you guys nailed it. Wouldn't you like to have somebody say that about you in the next year? You nailed it. When was the last time you nailed it? Like, well, it might have been a while, right? But you nailed it. What a cool thing to have somebody say to you. It was something important, and all of us have the capability to nail it. It's all there. If we play big, we can nail it. Not every time, but we can, and we should. And then the fourth one, legendary leader, couldn't have done it without you. That would be a very cool thing to have somebody say about you. Wow, we just had a great success, and you know what? We couldn't have done it without you. That's worth playing for. That's a real prize. So as you're listening to these awards, and the last one, by the way, we're having a new award tonight. So it's not given every year. In fact, it's never been given since I've been Master of Ceremonies. But it's called the Most Valuable Organization, the All-in-One. And here's the tagline. You showed us a better way of leading, collaborating, giving, and winning. The true meaning of strength in numbers. If you put that on my tombstone, I would declare victory. Right? I mean, that's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing to say. And all of us have this capability. We all can lead and collaborate and give and win together. So as you're listening to the awards tonight, and we're going to have some really great conversations with some really great people, I want you to be thinking about taking it out of this room and back into the world, because otherwise it's just a good dinner and some applause. We need to change things. In case you hadn't noticed, there's a few challenges going around the world right now. The world needs our help, and we can do that. So with that in mind, I'd like to kick off tonight's ceremony. Our first award of the evening is the Game Changer. Please welcome to the stage Sean de Bruvac of the Consumer Technology Association. Sean, come on up.
Thank you, Geoffrey, and I'd just like to say that I think you really nailed that introduction.
All right, check.
CTA is honored to be here this evening, to be a part of this wonderful and meaningful event, and to be a decade-long supporter of the Churchill Club. We're actually based in Washington, D.C., but whenever I'm out here, I always try to stop by and visit our friends at Churchill Club. And so it's an honor to be able to present the Game Changer Award tonight. It is not often that companies actually get to change the world in a significant way and change the way we live our lives. This company hasn't done it just once, but they've done it 3 times. Not that long ago, they pioneered actually mailing you DVDs, sending you DVDs through the mail, changing the way we accessed physical media. But not resting there, they then built a market-leading online content distribution channel and changing yet again the way we consume content. And along that way, creating entirely new terms like binge watching. They are now embarking on the 3rd phase of changing the game and changing the way that we live by becoming a major contributor to original content. This year they took home 9 Emmys. They've committed $600 million to original content. When Reed Hastings took the stage at CES, he announced to the world that we were watching the birth of a global television network. So you guessed it, the winner of the 2016 Game Changer Award. See, I was going back to when I was still having DVDs mailed to me. Now, fast forwarding to 2016, the winner, of course, is Netflix. Neil Hunt is here to accept that award, so please welcome me in inviting Neil up to the stage.
There he is.
Right here. And Paul Holland of Foundation Capital will join us as well for a conversation.
I want to give that to Neil.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Well, that's
There you go.
Come on in. Yeah, thank you. Okay, good deal. Good.
Where do you want to be? Right, left? I'll go over this way. I can face you.
that way better.
All right. Oh, boy. Thanks, everybody, on behalf of Neil and myself. So probably a little bit of background. Neil and I have known each other for 24 years. We met when he was sort of junior head of technology at a little startup called Pure Software, and I was junior head of sales at a little startup called Pure Software. We were 9 years old. Our CEO, who's become a lot more famous since then, Reed Hastings, was approximately 10 years old. So we're all child prodigies. I don't know where to begin with Neil. First, often you get involved in speaking things and somebody says, well, we introduced the speaker. And I can't think of anybody I'm more honored to introduce than Neil Hunt. I learned what it was like to be in an excellent product organization, which I've spent my whole career now at Foundation Capital looking for young Neil Hunts. And the reason for that is that Neil exhibits basically all the qualities you're looking for in somebody who's going to lead product in your organization. Leadership, intelligence, technical acumen, and also his ability to kind of look ahead and see strategy. So I couldn't be any more thrilled. Foundation couldn't be any more thrilled. We were a Series B lead at Netflix, my partner Mike Hsu. So all of that has been terrific. But I think the focus tonight is for us to kind of get inside the tent, as it were. Let's learn a little bit more about Netflix. Let's learn a little bit more about how one of the strongest heads of products on the planet runs his organization and creates value. And first, I'll open with that with just a very basic question. What does it mean to be head of product at Netflix? What does that job entail?
Well, the product development team is a product management and engineering team. And we're responsible for designing, building, and operating essentially all of the technology that underlies Netflix. That's the clients that you use, the apps on your phone, the apps on your TV, the website, the servers on the back end, the recommendations, the streaming technology. And I have to shout out somewhere in the back here, I've got a cheering crew of various members of my esteemed team. Couldn't have done it without you. I've been very fortunate, I think, to recruit a bunch of very talented individuals to help build this thing. And we've been going at it for 17 years now I've been at Netflix, and quite a number of these people have been with me for a long time. We've accomplished quite a lot, I think.
Put together a great team. So one of your roles is originating product, which at a place like Netflix must just be like a kid in a candy store. It must be amazing. How do you bring your point of view, your specific way of thinking about how products should be developed, how do you bring that into the equation?
Well, I like to think that there are the way that the key question here is, what do we want to build? What are features, what capabilities, what things do we need to build for our customers? And the traditional way that you figured out what to build was that you listened to the hippo, the highest paid person's opinion. And for hundreds of years, the hippo was who led a product organization and decided what to build. And what we've learned is that the hippo's opinion is often wrong. Sometimes it gets it right, but often it's wrong. And so then smart companies decided that it was better to listen to their customers instead and interview the customers and do focus groups and research. And we learned, too, that customers actually are singularly poor articulating what they need. And so we've moved into kind of a third generation, as many people here have done, in terms of bringing the scientific approach. We call it consumer science, A/B testing. We come up with an idea. Maybe to a fault, we build it as a test case, and then we field the idea against the original to maybe 1 million customers each. And then we measure how people react to that. We measure the metrics that are of interest, the hours of streaming, the retention, the acquisition, so on and so forth. And by getting real data back from real customers, we get to learn just how poorly we guessed what would work and what wouldn't work. And occasionally we get a win. We did about 600 tests last year. About 150 of them we had some kind of material win. So about every couple of days we get to step the product one little bit better, whether it's a piece of copy or a new algorithm or something more significant. But it's very incremental. It's very much driven by customer feedback, and we call it the consumer science approach.
It's terrific. So one of the things, we'll change course a little bit. Normally, we're talking ahead of product. You just kind of veer away from sort of the HR issues and the people issues in the company as a bit of a stereotype that certainly doesn't apply in your case. But the notion of culture at Netflix has, of course, become a pretty big deal. And I understand that Sheryl Sandberg has called the Netflix culture document one of the most important documents in recent times in the Silicon Valley. How do you interpret that? I mean, you've been there 17 years, been running product. What does that question mean to you?
It all started back in about 2000. And many of you may remember that there was an internet bubble in 2000 and it burst. And we were kind of in the wrong place. We were spending heavily and had a big team of 20 or 30. And we were running out of money real quick. And we ended up cutting deeply. We cut about a third of the staff. And it was an extremely painful experience. But the remarkable thing was that along with cutting staff, we cut a lot of surplus things that we were doing. We really focused on what was important. And we began to realize that, you know what, this actually feels pretty good. We've really focused in on the things that matter, and we've got the right set of people, and we're really going to make this happen. And there are a lot of discussions came out of that effort, discussions about how to run an organization that would avoid the chaos of complexity. We knew that if we were successful, we were going to be a big organization. My team's about 1,600 people now. How do you run a big organization without tripping over your toes? And we worried about process being the rules that prevent you getting in trouble, but they also prevent you doing things nimbly and aggressively. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about how we could do things differently and better, and we came up with freedom and responsibility, and the idea to treat people as mature adults, give them the freedom to go what needs to be done, eliminate the stupid rules, and then expect people to take responsibility for doing the best thing for the business, the best thing that you can do. And from that starting point, we engineered things like candidness and feedback. You know, let's make sure that if you don't like what somebody's doing, you don't just tolerate it. You tell them that they're doing it wrong, and you give them the interesting feedback that helps everybody to improve. It's a great gift. is difficult and painful to give that feedback, but it's a great gift to get the feedback and learn that, no, you could have done that better, and it helps everyone to improve. And then, things like the no vacation policy that many of you have heard about. So a lot of those things come out of this. You treat people as adults, and you expect them to take the time they need to refresh and get their work done, and that's great. And so I think the culture has been a really big piece of keeping our organization nimble and effective. And I have to credit Bobby, who's sitting in the table here, as being our tech HR rep, and has helped us to really continue to improve. It's really a process continuing to try to grow better and better every week, every month, every year.
I've been fortunate enough to spend time around most of the executives of Netflix over the years, and I love the fact that each of you has so much passion around that topic. It really just, it sort of bleeds the company colors and inspires people. So I think that's terrific that you guys have managed to pull that off. Back more, maybe you're into the technology and the product, data. Data is a huge element of what you guys do. Yep. Over the years, there's been lots of coverage about how you think about data, how you create different things around it. How do you think about it? Like, what's important about data? What do you care about? What do you not care as much about? What do you do about it?
Well, it kind of goes along with the consumer science approach. It's all data-driven, what happens. But we use data for everything. But perhaps the most important thing we do with data is to confront the moment of truth. So you sit down in front of Netflix, you sit down in front of your television, and our consumer insights data tells us that we have 30 to 60 to 90 seconds to capture your interest by putting great stuff in front of you. Now, if you were in front of a linear television, you'd flip through a dozen favorite channels, and one of them would suffice, and off you go. But we have thousands or tens of thousands of choices, and so you're not going to flip through 10,000 choices. That's just way beyond the scale of most people's attention span. And so it's how do I distill thousands of choices down to 10 or a dozen or a couple of screenfuls that make sure that it captures your interest. And I want to be Netflix for everyone. I don't want to make a channel that's themed and stylized towards kids or towards young adults. I want to be able to do everything. So personalization, being able to put the right choices in front of everybody. Think of it as 80 million Netflixes for 80 million subscribers, and using the feedback from what you've watched in the past to be able to predict the kinds of things that are interesting that you might want to watch in the future, make sure that those go up on that first screen so it can capture your interest. And that's sort of been a passion that's driven the data team since 1999. We started working on personalization. I think Caitlin, my head of science and algorithms, is here and is driving a lot of that work too. We work very hard to use the data to the benefit of putting the right choices in front of people. I think it's a huge and interesting problem. It's one that affects lots of businesses that deal in taste-based product. I think we're a small way into a giant problem. I think we'll continue to make progress for a long way. Just to put the scale on it, we generate about 150 million hours of viewing every day. That's tens of billions of data points about stuff that you watched and didn't watch every month. Tens of billions. That's a lot of data. From that, we can pull a lot of insights and make a lot of good predictions. And we've done things like the Netflix Prize and open sourcing a lot of data and algorithms in the space. And it's really been a very exciting area for us.
So back when we were 9 years old and we worked together at our first startup, it was impossible to imagine that either one of us or any of our colleagues would go and work someplace for 17 years, right?
Yes.
The people who worked for 17 years were working for, really old companies or for the government or some other kind of thing. That's just not what hip-hop happening startups do, right? So you're 17 years into a 19-year-old company, plus or minus. How do you, keep it fresh? How do you keep it engaging? What about it? Because I think a lot of people, again, on the surface, a young person would look and go, well, I'm just never going to do that. And then yet you did it. Clearly you have no regrets about doing that. So what is it about that has kept it fresh?
Well, we heard a little about it in the introduction. And it's really, for me, I think of it as 5 or 6 different jobs that I've done along the way. So in 1999, when I came aboard, the very first thing we had to invent subscription and build that and make it go. And then in 2007, we launched the streaming product, and that was a completely different thing. And then in 2008, we realized that, oops, the technology we'd built for the DVD business was inadequate, and we were going to have to switch to a multi-data center cloud, all virtualized thing. And we had started on an 8-year odyssey of pushing into cloud technologies, which was pretty exciting. And then in 2010, we launched in Canada, and we followed that up with a big international expansion. And so there's a lot of excitement about what it means to be the first global television network at some level. And then Originals is the most recent innovation. And there's lots of fun stuff to do as we think about producing our own content. I never would have guessed as a geeky technologist 20 years ago that I'd be interested in shooting movies, but there you have it.
So Netflix has not always had a smooth path, right? I mean, it's one where I think people look at it today and go, wow, just huge, what a great impact, amazingly valuable organization, what a great management team. I always remind people of this. So we led the Series B of Netflix. We had about 11% of the company. There was a period of time where 11% of the company was worth approximately $22 million. It's like, I don't want to make people feel bad, but you could have bought as much Netflix as you wanted back when the stock dipped to around a $200 million market cap.
And J-Ho did.
Yeah, I know he did. We didn't, he did. J-Ho will get honored another night. Sorry, Jay. There you go. But, the thing that everybody knows, of course, is the transition to streaming, right? You know, you're going to move from that, and you guys come out, and with all this force and conviction, you say, we're going to split the company, we're going to do this. I don't even remember it was so bad, right? So what was happening then, and then how did you recover from that? What was that transition like?
We could talk for an hour about that.
Yes.
In a nutshell, it was 2011, and we were done with DVD. DVD had propelled us forward, and streaming was really taking root. And we knew that streaming was a disruption. It was the internet was the disruption. And the internet enabled different things. And there's been a lot of literature written, a lot of discussions, a lot of classes taught on disruptive innovation. One of the takeaways is that very, very few businesses get to survive a disruption. It's the incumbent dies, and the challenger succeeds. And so we didn't want to be that incumbent trying to transition into the internet digital era and not making it. And so we tacked our boat very, very hard. We decided we were going to split the company so that we could have our key people spend all of their attention focused on the streaming business, which is really quite a different business in some ways of looking at it. And we needed to go through a pretty big price increase in order to pay for the streaming content we were bringing on board, and in order to be able to leave the DVD business behind, and in order to be able to go international, all the stuff we needed to do. And we didn't do it gracefully, but we tacked that boat. And we pushed out the DVD guys, and they went to a different office, and they still generate a nice profit stream for us. But I and none of my team spends any time thinking about DVD at all. And eventually, we didn't sink the boat, fortunately. And we learned a bunch of lessons. We'd do it differently next time, but it had to be done, and it was going to be painful no matter what. And I think that's an important lesson to dig into for anyone who's interested in how do you disrupt yourself, how do you chart a new course forward, and not get so distracted by focusing on the big revenue streams and the customer requirements from your existing customers that you can't pay attention to the new customers and the new modalities and the new things you need to do to be successful in the disruptive business. So that was the key lesson for us.
So we're running short of time now. We're going to have to wrap up pretty soon. But I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the concept of original content. That was another one where people are looking and going, uh-oh, are they going to step in it again? What business do they have going into the original content business? They're a distribution company. They're a technology company. So what does that mean for you, both from a product perspective and as an executive in the company?
Yeah, the strategy behind original content was in part to have first-run content and not licensed second-run content. And by having first-run content, we make it more attractive to bring in new subscribers, and it's just generally more powerful. But there was a second piece of the strategy, which is, let's figure out how to have a source of content that makes sense when the studios wake up and figure out that they shouldn't sell us their content. Now they're waking up, and now we've built that capability to start doing original content. We're doing about 600 hours this year of original content, and it's growing great. The opportunity for us in a tech space is really twofold. And one is that we have unprecedented data to help us decide the kinds of shows and movies that we should make. We can predict an audience for it with some degree of fidelity. So we can at least lessen the risk of making interesting content. That's one thing. The second thing is that being technologists and not Hollywood, and being cloud fluent, we decided that it's a good opportunity to start thinking about studio in the cloud. How do we take a studio operation and put lots of that technology into the cloud too? So things all the way from how do you manage the union truck drivers bringing cameras onto the set, all the way to how do you archive the day's footage in the cloud so the stuff that was shot in India and Korea for Sense8 can get viewed and edited back in Hollywood tonight. And so there's lots of opportunities now. So that's the latest current challenge that we've just started in on. I think it'll be really exciting too.
And so as we wrap, you heard that you were going to win the award, Netflix is going to win the award around product for the game changer. What does that game changer concept mean in your context?
I think when you boil it down, the internet is the game changer here. The internet is a different distribution vehicle that enables all kinds of new things. It enables you to do on-demand, which is a key piece. It enables you to do ad-free and be able to collect and pay for it in an interesting way. Ultimately, it enables things like international distribution, because we're not stuck behind physical distribution, which has all kinds of challenges to go international. We can serve our content to 130 new countries overnight, which is quite exciting. And I think that really it's building a new kind of TV and movie distribution business and studio business, in fact, around the notion that the internet enables us to do it differently. And so that, to me, is what enabled the game changing. And we were in the right place at the right time with the right money flow from the DVD business to be able to take advantage of that. And a lot of luck came along, and we've been very fortunate too.
We're all very fortunate because Netflix has enriched all of our lives. And thank you. Thank you for spending the time today, and thank you all for listening.
Okay. Thanks very much.
That's great. That was wonderful. Okay, our next award. It's an exciting discretionary award. This is the one called the Most Valuable Organization, the All-in-One. John Walsh of Accenture will present that award. Please welcome John Walsh.
Thank you, Geoffrey. I'd like to start tonight by actually thanking Karen and the Churchill Club for putting on such innovative programs like this and bringing together so many amazing leading. A quick hand for Karen and the Churchill Club. So tonight, as Geoffrey described, I'll present the most memorable or the most valuable organization award, the All-in-One. This award is reserved for that rare organization that embodies all four areas of excellence that we measure: innovation, collaboration, leadership, and societal benefit. I have had the pleasure of working with a number of leaders in this organization over the course of the past year, and I can tell you what they've accomplished and what they're setting out to do is truly amazing. But really, their success speaks for itself, particularly since the new ownership took the reins a few years ago. And in just a few short years, we've seen this organization named as the most sports team of the year in 2014. They won the 2015 NBA championship. They delivered the most regular season wins in the history of the NBA at 73, and the most combined regular season and post wins at 88. It is home to the most Googled athlete on the planet. responsible for the most exciting player acquisition in recent memory, which hopefully we'll hear something about tonight. They have presented us with a truly visionary plan to build out the Chase Center in the Bay Area District in 2019. And most importantly, they will be our NBA champions in 2017. God willing. This is really the easy award to present. So it is my pleasure, and on behalf of Accenture and all of your fans around the world, to present the All-in-One Award to the Golden State Warriors and their CEO, Jay Lacob, and owner. And I'm going to invite Joe, as well as Bob Fitzgerald, to join me on the stage for a quick discussion. For those of you who don't know, Bob Fitzgerald, many talented, 20 years now, play-by-play announcer for the Warriors. Congratulations.
All right. Over here?
Yeah, over here. Yeah.
I got to hand this to you.
All right. Yeah. I'll take this. Actually. Thank you. I want you to sit here.
Okay, hopefully everybody was thinking the same thing I was during this. Is this a set from Love Connection or Match Game? I was just wondering. We have Bert Convey's mic here, but I feel like Joe's Bachelor number 3 or something. Just in all candor, I carpooled with our owner today. This is like the greatest Uber driver in the history of Uber. You could ask him anything and he's got all the answers. But let's start with 6 years ago you buy the Warriors. I know, working there for 20 plus years, that they had 17 years of not making the playoffs. So when he's rattling off 73 wins, championship, 88 wins, it didn't come overnight. And so one of the tenets of the Churchill Awards All-in-One is leadership. And I think your venture capital background, the leadership was your evaluation of people and hiring people. Where do you synthesize that? Because we'll start with Bob Myers, who's your general manager, who was a player agent, which is hiring a bank robber to run bank security now, because he's your GM for your team. But talk a little bit about leadership and just evaluating the people in all the different departments with the franchise.
Well, Bob, I don't know about bank robber. Maybe that's not the best analogy. But first of all, thank you to the Churchill Club for this award. It's a great honor. And I'm always amazed when a sports team can be in the same dais with some of these great companies that have obviously built very valuable organizations, employ a lot of people, and create a lot of value. So, to your point, at the end of the day, I like to say, my job is really kind of similar to what it was in venture capital for 25 years at Kleiner Perkins. It's really to pick people because, all I do is set high goals for our organization and then go out and get the very best people to hopefully achieve those goals, figure out how to do it. And that's what we do. We're relentless about the types of people we bring into the organization. And it had to be because when we bought this organization for the world record price at the time of $450 million, those are pretty expensive courtside seats. But when we did that, I remember sitting there at the first game and thinking, oh my God, this is terrible. What have we done? I mean, the team was terrible. I can tell you that in the first 6 months of sitting inside the organization, the management wasn't too good either. And we had to ultimately change, to your point about people, 80% of the management, 50% probably of the entire organization in terms of the people, maybe more. And who you choose to bring into an organization like that is, just like it is in a startup or in any company in Silicon Valley or anywhere, it's everything. It's the people. It's all about the people. Set high goals, hopefully have the right goals, and then bring in great people.
Well, and I think that one of the tenets also is collaboration. And normally, it's a top-down approach in pro sports, where you have a GM or an owner, and they make all the decisions, and the team sinks or swim based on their acumen. Your basketball department, Joe Lacob, Bob Myers, Jerry West, Kirk Lacob, Travis Schlenk, Larry Riley, this is one where courageous conversations occur. Why should we do this? Justify this decision. Make your case for this player. Do this trade. Don't do this trade. Where does that leadership come about, where the collaboration and the free flow of ideas is allowed and encouraged for the betterment success of the whole group?
If you are and I'm sure that a lot of other guys in this room, there's some great CEOs, if you don't encourage openness, if you don't encourage having an opinion, you're not going to be successful. So the most important thing to me, anyway, in forming this organization, I've been a venture guy for a long time, been involved in building companies, but I wasn't the CEO. When you're there in the CEO's role, and by the way, it's your capital for the most part as well, the number one thing is you want to hear what other people have to say. You want to listen very carefully, and you want them to have opinions. So from day one, in our organization, number one, you have to have an opinion or better be somewhere else. And we air them. We shut the door. We air the opinions about the draft, with player selection you're referring to in basketball, but on the business side as well. We air opinions. We argue. We yell at each other even. We're pretty open about this. And at the end of the day, we don't take forever to make a decision. We accumulate all the data. We analyze. We come to a decision. We close the door behind us, and we're all on the same page, and we make the decision. And we go forward. Obviously, we had an architecture, a framework of what we were interested in building that was the basis for the types of players we're going to bring in, because it is about architecture, just like it is with a product or a company. You're building a team. So that's what we had to do. We had to encourage this kind of discussion, this kind of discourse, which always is a good thing. So I guess what I'm saying is the only thing I brought to that party was, having seen a lot of companies over a lot of years, having seen a lot of CEOs, I knew that what I didn't know, which was most everything, and I just wanted to encourage discourse, encourage conversation, and the only thing I'm good at really is listening. And if you listen hard, and that goes for inside the organization and for outside the organization, you listen hard, and smartly, you're going to come to the right conclusions usually.
Branch Rickey, who ran the Dodgers for years, said luck is the residue of design. Well, the Warriors got really lucky this summer with Kevin Durant signing as a free agent. But it wasn't a multimedia extravaganza. It wasn't financial overpaying. It was you traveling with several of your players for the personal pitch to join this organization. It really was your collective group of players as being part of the Warriors that eventually sold him on wanting to join and be part of this elite team.
People ask me all the time, why did Kevin Durant choose to come to the Warriors when he could have gone to any other team and frankly looked better doing it, right? Because he got criticized this summer a lot for joining a team that had won a record 73 games and came within, unfortunately, 56 seconds of winning another championship. I think it was 56, am I right? It's hard to forget. He came fundamentally because of two things. He came because of the culture of the organization that we had built, the honesty with which we represented and built it, and more importantly, he came because of who he was going to play with, the players. Not because of me, not because of Bob Myers, not because of Steve Kerr, our coach. I mean, the Bay Area helped. Some of these things all helped. A call from Jerry West helped. But he came because of these players who I flew out there to meet with him in a strange place, East Hampton, which is very remote, by the way. On July 1, it's hard to get a hotel room, by the way, too. But we went there with all these four key players, and we met with them, and we just honestly and openly said, this is why you should join this team. And these guys sold him on that. We didn't even we had a presentation. We're good at making presentations. It's the business we're in. And didn't even show it. I never got to show it. I just said, we don't need the presentation. There's an old adage that says when you get the order or you're getting the order, just shut up. And I could tell we were getting the order here. So let these guys do their thing. In fact, I had them leave the room without me there, without us, the management guys there, and just talk to this guy. And, that was really what happened.
One of the core tenets of this award is societal benefit. And you have, sports is one of the last communal places that people gather. There's 20,000 people at Oracle enjoying the Warriors. We talk about social media. Sometimes these phones and other devices make us the most antisocial. When you get 20,000 people cheering for Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, we have a psychotic owner courtside who's enjoying himself as well. That's about a communal event. And your societal benefit is the Warrior Foundation. You give away more millions of dollars than any other sports franchise. You do it in groups of $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 increments. I've made those phone calls to all Bay Area organizations for underprivileged people. And when they get a phone call saying the Golden State Warriors would like to give you $50,000 to better your community or do something special, we talk game changer, it's life-changing for some of these groups. Where was the impetus for that? Because that had not been done in the NBA prior.
Well, that might be a little aggressive. He's a great salesman, as well as being our broadcaster. It might be a little aggressive to say it hasn't been done. It's been done, but probably not thought of as being done in as big a way as we thought was necessary to do, and certainly are on our way to making it a lot bigger. And that is the giving that this organization does. We are, essentially, and you've heard this from other owners of sports teams, I don't really own the team. Who owns the team is, at the end of the day, the fans, the community, because it's going to be here long after I'm gone. So we have a role in society, at least in the Bay Area, at a minimum, to do good, to use that product, that the fact that we get all that attention, that dais, to do good. And one of the ways we can do good, you have to pick your mission. It's like anything else. For us, it's underprivileged education. And from day one, our goal would not only win an NBA championship. By the way, that is number one. I will be clear. Not only to win an NBA championship, but also to do good in the Bay Area community with this platform, if you will. And so we started the Warriors Foundation, or restarted the Warriors Foundation. And a lot of you have been involved in, I'm sure, various things where you raise money. They create an endowment like universities do. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but you only give away a certain percentage every year. I don't know. I don't have the patience for that. We wanted to have an impact, so we give away everything we raise every year, and we start over. It's a lot of hard work. Thank you. But that's what we do. I think we gave away $3 million this last year, which is the largest, unfortunately, the largest in the NBA. And I can tell you that is going to grow by leaps and bounds as whatever we do in terms of building our organization for the future, we are alongside, and we'll sort of announce a lot of those plans pretty soon. We're going to be increasing the role of the Warriors Foundation, again, targeted at underprivileged education throughout the Bay Area. We're going to announce a lot of new programs, and I think it's going to be pretty surprising to a lot of people, the magnitude to which we're going to take it.
This is my phrase for Joe and the ownership, and we have a lot of our executives here, and that's agitate for excellence. You win a championship, and most people put their feet up. We won a championship. We sit back, and then we top 83 wins with 88 wins. And then, well, everything's sold out. We'll just enjoy everything at Oracle, the ticket prices, the luxury suites, the sponsorship. Now let's build a new arena in San Francisco, in a city that has never had an arena ever. We'll privately fund it. We'll buy the land, and we'll build it ourselves. The innovation or the follow-on of not being complacent and agitating for excellence, where does that mindset come from, and why do you demand that from all the departments within the franchise?
Fear. Fear. I'm scared. I'm not going to get to do all the things I want to do in life. So I don't have patience. I don't have time to screw around. And I know look, I'm not going to criticize other sports team owners. They can go about doing whatever they're going to do. And I know how teams build arenas and stadiums historically, which is they go get public money. I knew in the Bay Area that was very unlikely or was going to take a long time. And so from day one, we just said, forget it. Okay? Let's just do this privately. It's going to be really hard. It's going to be more expensive than you do it anywhere else. It's going to cost $1.1 billion, by the way. Most expensive arena ever done. It's just what it costs in the Bay Area. You know what the cost of business is. You do it every day. All privately financed. All, 100%, including buying the land, building the underground parking that doesn't exist in the mud, the Bay mud, which is a very expensive proposition. And at the end of the day, we're just going to have to figure out a way to make it work. We're going to have to figure out a way to pay off $1.1 billion and make it still be a profitable business. And the way to do that is to, frankly, think big and to think these are the things we can do. We can create a large enough organization that's going to be profitable, that's going to be able to pay off the debt service required on that, that's going to build an arena that will be around for 50 years privately. And I think we're proud of the fact that we're doing it that way. And the truth of the matter is we have more control over what we're doing by doing it that way than we would if we were publicly financed. So I'm not saying everyone has to do it that way or can do it that way in other places. I thought we could do it here, and we are doing it here. And it's working.
Could you be a little more passionate? The next time we do one of these, could you bring a little more passion to the thing, please? I mean, Joe, come on.
It's like being courtside in one of the games. I can't control myself.
We had an ugly incident at dinner because when Garrett was talking about Shell and robots, Joe was feverishly taking notes because he was like, Durant, Curry, some robots. This could be something. So you never know with this guy. What would be the final takeaway? If people said, I came to the Churchill Club, I saw Joe Lacob, he told me about the Warriors, where they've gone, where they're headed, and you want this group of elite people to take away something, about the Warrior success that maybe they could co-brand or bring into their organizations?
Well, you know, I have the fortunate aspect of the fact that I have been involved in the Valley for a long time, 25, 30 years, building companies and helping build companies. And, you know, there's something about the nature, as you all know, you live here, there's something about it that's different than everywhere else. You can talk about doing this in Boston or other places they do tech companies. It's just not the same. We have this history. We have this culture. I don't know if it's in the air, whatever it is. It's all around Stanford and everything that gets done. And, you know, I think we set our mind to say, here's an organization. I've been going to those basketball games for a long time. Bob, you were broadcasting them.
Yes, I was.
And I don't know how you made them seem interesting, but you did. They were terrible, terrible, terrible. Okay? Awful. And like everybody who wants to own a sports team, if you're a kid or an adult or whatever, you sit there and say, I can do better, because everyone thinks they can do better. Right? That's what sports is all about. And I said that. I can do better. And the truth of the matter is, you can do better if you set the goals, hire the people, and just say, we're going to win. We are going to win. We are going to relentlessly pursue excellence in our organization. Inside, out, we're going to deliver a tremendous product. We're going to make people proud, and we're just not going to quit until we win the championship. And we're going to set a goal. We're going to win that championship. And that's the way we pursued it. It's the way we set it up. It may seem crazy to some people. It may have not seemed plausible. Some of the things that I said, I wish I could take some of the things back that I sometimes say. But the truth is, you have to, like any great leader, has to set these goals for the organization and then go out and get the best people and just go do it. Just make a great organization. And I say this, the reason I put it this way is because it's very much like in venture capital. It goes back to that for me. It goes back to the early days when we were building some great companies at Kleiner Perkins. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's all about not how much did you invest here or there, how did you seed money here or there. No, it's not about all that financial stuff. That's the easy part. The hard part is building the companies. Building the companies, hiring the people, having the right product strategies, and building the companies. And you, as a venture capitalist, as a startup entrepreneur, as a CEO, you just make it happen. That's what the great leaders do. That's what Reed Hastings and some of these, they just make it happen. They figure out a way. And so at the end of the day, I guess I say to all of you, it's like what we're doing is no different. It's in the world of sports. It may seem different, but it's really the same. It's about setting these goals, hiring the people, and just being relentless about the pursuit of excellence and making it happen.
Give it up for the Warrior owner, Joe Lacob.
Thank you very much.
That's great. Good job. Good job. Okay. Next up in our awards is maybe my favorite. They're all my favorites. The Global Benefactor. Please welcome Janaki Akella of McKinsey to introduce this award. Janaki?
Thank you, Geoffrey. Movies, games, now let's talk about something with meaning and purpose, right? Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be here on behalf of McKinsey to present the 2016 Global Benefactor Award. The Global Benefactor Award is about stepping up with energy and conviction, and contributing to the betterment of society and world around us. This, of course, can be done in many ways. Philanthropy, dedicating one's life to particular causes, an individual's philosophy, whether they do it personally or professionally. This is a theme that particularly resonates with us in McKinsey. We firmly believe that we should play an important role in addressing the most important issues of industry and communities. We are committed in focusing our efforts, particularly through Churchill in this way. So when the announcement came that the Churchill Academy had selected Reid Hoffman to receive this award, we could not have been more excited. Reid, we are honored to present to you the 2016 Global Benefactor Churchill Award. Thanks for thinking big. Julie will draw this out a bit more in terms of how Reid does this today. Reid will be joining us from Colorado, and he will be participating remotely in a discussion with Julie, and she's here with us today. Please join me in welcoming Reid Hoffman and Julie.
Hi.
How are
you?
Okay, here we go.
One of us.
One of us is very exciting. All right, please come over. There we go. Yeah, yeah.
3, 2.
Thank you. Okay. So how are you going to do this?
I was hoping you'd tell me.
Okay. There he is. There he is.
This is a particularly small hat anyway, but given the size you're appearing, and it's sort of, it's kind of a comical, fun thing. But good to see you. So I have a bit of a dilemma because the things I want to say about Reid, I think might make him uncomfortable. Reid's all about the work, and he has a stealthiness to him that he's not about attention on himself. So I'm going to ask you to just plug your ears, Reid, while I do this first part, and then there we go. Thanks. Reid and I have known each other almost a decade and a half. We have worked on the board of Kiva for almost a decade, and we have been having an interesting kind of long-running conversation, or a series of conversations over that time. Each one for me is a master class. There's something about the way that Reid thinks, sort of there's a surgical precision that makes you just want to be better. And so I just feel an incredible sense of gratitude, and I'm just humbled and honored to be able to do this with you tonight. I feel just incredibly fortunate to call you a friend. If there's one word that describes Reid, it's scale. And he thinks about scale in everything that he does. So what I wanted to try and do tonight, my goal is to actually hack the Reid Hoffman operating system. And I'm hoping you'll help me and figure out kind of how to identify the master algorithm and convince him that the ultimate act of scale would be to actually open source the Reid Hoffman operating system. You guys with me on this? All right, great. He doesn't really, you don't need an introduction. I think people know sort of the long-running list of companies that you have been involved with. I think what's striking about it is, in terms of just the high line, is that they're all companies that are purpose-driven. They are at the forefront of their field. They've been pioneers, and you could put world's largest in the front of all of them. And maybe what I'll do is I'll just talk a little bit about what you've done that's not in your bio. You've been advising the Obama White House around technology policy. You've gathered small groups of us around what, as a private citizen, what Obama might do in the future. And when you're not advising or investing in or serving on the boards of the 100 companies that you're involved with or doing the work with the White House, you find time to mentor and advise friends and colleagues. And when you're not doing that, you are designing games. And the most recent game being trumped up cards. Does anybody know this one? For those of you who don't know about trumped up cards, just Google it, buy one. It'll be the most fun you've had since the election started. Okay, so with that, I'm going to ask you actually a question. So why scale? How long have you been thinking about this, and what's your mindset?
So part of, I think, what's key to think about this is, and I think, by the way, not everyone needs to scale, but for me, I tend to think about how does humanity evolve. So what is the way that we kind of go into the future together, both as individuals and as a group. And, sometimes you can do that by contributing an idea. That was my original plan. I thought I might become a philosopher, an academic, a public intellectual. And then what I realized was actually, in fact, by participating in the kind of software revolution, the online revolution, the internet revolution, the mobile revolution, now the social and professional network revolution, that I could actually help how people charted their own path, and also how collectively in the millions and the hundreds of millions and the billions, we can be better as both as individuals and together. And the reason why to think about scale is because those are the things that, like if you take a simple kind of utilitarian meaning of life, which is how do you create the most impact, I think it comes down to almost a super simple variable, which is a number of people, depth of impact, and time. And if you multiply those three things together, you end up with kind of how much you have helped improve or shape or enable people's lives and society. And so for me, that's almost always how I think about this. There's sometimes a difference when you're sitting down with a coffee with a friend and your scale is the depth at which you're talking to them. But broadly, I think that the way to look to think about this is the meaning that we create by how we influence millions of people's lives.
So it seems that maybe your first scale endeavor was actually thinking about how to scale yourself, because you were going to go into academia and be a public intellectual, and instead you decided to go into business and become an entrepreneur. What was the logic there?
Well, the logic was I started thinking about what it would take to write a PhD, and part of the kind of the degree of precision and what counted as professionalism would be that maybe you'd be lucky if 50 people would read it, and even a relatively small number of people would be capable of understanding it. And while I think there is good work there, you can contribute to concepts that shape how people think about these things. I realized what I was much more interested in was kind of how we express human nature. What is current human nature? How does it shaped? How does it evolve? And that I wanted to be on a much broader scale, and that simply writing a PhD or academic book was unlikely to kind of play at the in the way of helping shape people's lives that I'd wanted. And then I'd had the good fortune and pure luck of going to Stanford as an undergraduate. And so I thought about software I thought about entrepreneurship. I'd never participated in it. And I said, well, actually, maybe I should go back and do that. And that would be a way to actually, in fact, help us collectively evolve to compassion, to wisdom, to knowledge, to economic capability, all of these kind of vectors that lead to improved human lives.
And why do you care about impact? And, how did you think about it? So, I think some people might look at you and say, gee, well, he's wealthy, he's got a lot of resources to put towards things that he cares about, but you've been thinking about impact long before you're wealthy. How did you think about it, and why did you care about it?
Well, part of it is that when you think about, if you think about, okay, how is the world a better place for my having been here? It's you'd like to be net very strongly accretive. You'd say, well, I'm one person, I kind of consume this much calories and food and oxygen, and occupy this place in society. I've been fortunate with the kind of location of birth lottery in terms of I was born in the Stanford Hospital in Silicon Valley. How do I essentially make that worthwhile, worthy, meaningful? And, if you can, you play at the scale of millions, or if you want to and you can. But, part of what I realized from the very early days is that sometimes just contributing an idea, that was part of the reason of thinking about, writing books or essays. That can be meaningful and can scale. One of the things I realized when I was thinking about how do you contribute as a life, once I started down the path in Silicon Valley with a job at Apple and then a job at Fujitsu Software, it was like, actually, in fact, you should always be doing something to contribute every year, and you should be thinking about how do you do that. And so I started joining nonprofit boards, and in particular nonprofit boards where I felt that I could kind of make a significant significant difference. So like the very first one I did was this East Palo Alto nonprofit called Open Voice, which was working to get essentially teens from low-income families to participate in crossing the digital divide, to learn how to be on the internet, to express themselves, to contribute to the dialogue, and these sorts of things as a way of making that happen. And what you could realize is if even just a little bit of your time with your particular expertise, in my case that was online products and online networks and communities, that you can make a difference. And so it doesn't necessarily need to be large checks. It can be just something where you are the Archimedean lever. You can make something really work. And you just build that and scale yourself as you go. And so, that's how I started. And, each year I think, okay, now that I have these resources, this knowledge, these assets, what are the things that I can do now?
So kind of segue to that, because I think one of the things that we really have aligned around is global entrepreneurship. We've done a lot of things around that, and you've helped me sort of create a larger platform around that with Kiva. We both served as presidential ambassadors for global entrepreneurship. We've done some writing around this. And so, why, from your perspective, why is entrepreneurship as much of kind of a social impact endeavor as it is a business?
Well, one of the things, obviously, people tend to think entrepreneurship is just the functioning of the capitalist free economy. It's true, it's important. But when you look at it, the creation of jobs, the creation of products and services, these things are the things that allow people to pay for education for their children, medical care, contribute to their society. And so part of what's actually really essential is as we enter into this faster kind of technological disruption and creation, kind of creative destruction, as we worry about, can we create the right kinds of middle-class jobs in our country and in the world for the future? Actually, in fact, entrepreneurship is critically important. And what most people don't realize is that most systems tend to harden against entrepreneurship. Once you get all the haves, whether they're businesses or wealthy people or whatever, they tend to say, oh, no, let's lock this system in and make it just work for us. Whereas you have to leave room for the new challenges. You have to leave room for the new creators. And we do this really well in Silicon Valley. You kind of think, we created these big companies, but then we go and create the new companies after them. We don't just say, okay, those are the companies and we're done. And that kind always the kind of creation of new is part of what allows us to create and invent the future. And so doing entrepreneurship as philanthropy, whether it's in Silicon Valley, in East Palo Alto, in Detroit, in the US, and in the world, then actually, in fact, helps us collectively create those jobs, those products, those services. And one of the things that people frequently forget about Adam Smith is that part of his kind of invention of the invisible hand and kind of free markets was actually, in fact, a way of being of service to each other. And this is actually, in fact, one of the reasons why it's important to do, and one of the reasons why it's important to do philanthropically is because the natural tendency of human political systems and human social systems is to kind of harden against challengers. And actually, in fact, we need those in order to create the jobs of the future and therefore pay for education, pay for medical care, et cetera. And so that's part of the reason why it's been such a central part of, my philanthropic efforts, also yours, Julie, and a number of great people within Silicon Valley. And, Kiva and Endeavor is, based out of New York, but global. All of these folks contribute mightily to this.
So should we be blurring the lines between business and philanthropy and really focusing and encouraging more purpose-driven business?
The answer to that question. The answer is obviously yes. One part of it is just creating good businesses. Those create jobs, products, services. Another part is create businesses that actually, in fact, have a real mission to them, that have kind of how do we not only create a good business, but have a really good social impact. Obviously in the kind of LinkedIn case, this is enabling economic opportunity for every individual, connecting talent opportunity. And then part of it is I actually think every business should look at its mission and say, how do I invest in my mission? My business creates a platform. How do I invest in it in order to create a disproportionate positive social impact? So, for example, at LinkedIn, we invest in veterans, being able to find jobs and reintegrate in the workforce. We've invested heavily in refugees being able to find work. Those kind of things which, obviously play to our business, but we invest disproportionately in them because we're the right players to contribute there to society. And I think that does blur the line in very good ways, but it also, of course, has super positive impact with, motivated employees, with, customers who are very happy, with shareholders who believe in this. And that's part of where, business can be a great force for social good. And entrepreneurship can be, the creation of those new businesses, which are really key.
So are you willing to let us in on what your master algorithm might be?
Well, it kind of starts with, you look at the outcomes and you think, how many people, what kind of depth of impact with them, and then over time. And part of the reason why business models are really useful, one of the things that we do very well in Silicon Valley, and part of what I try to apply to all aspects of my philanthropy, or the vast majority of them, is because if you can actually make the business model work, then you can potentially create infinite organizations that are creating good social impact, good social change for individuals year after year, and that creates a large integration under the curve. And so you then say, okay, well, what's the way that I can get this thing to scale? How do I build it to scale from the beginning? How do I get customers? How do I have the organization do that? And how do I go through the phases? And that's part of one of the reasons why one of the books I'm working on now is blitzscaling. It's one of the things that we do very well in the Valley. And then how do we think about those variables from the very beginning, where you get one or more what I call Archimedean levers, which when you pull on them, you get to the scale impact of number of people, depth of impact, and time. And time is in part business models and an ability to continually fund it.
So if there's one thing that you would like people to remember or take away from tonight, what would that be?
What I would say is that your own ability to contribute at scale, you always have it. You don't need to have a large bank account. You don't need to have a, a completely unique position, like a big social media position or something like that. I think that actually, in fact, you can do this by where do you have expertise, and where is there some scale organization that's already creating a platform that you can contribute to and help amplify. Whether that's, for example, what Julie and I are doing with Kiva, trying to make like micro entrepreneurs all over the world enabled through the capital, through an online marketplace. Whether or not that's helping new entrepreneurs, whether or not that's working in a particular company that has kind of a scale impact and helping it with its mission and having a broader social impact. All of us can do this. And so you just think about, okay, where do I have a unique set of assets, a unique knowledge, a unique position, and where can I contribute? And then do so. And I think it's doable for everybody. So that's what I would hope that everyone would take away.
Okay, so well, if you'll indulge me, I just want to close by a passage from a Khalil Gibran quote, which I think sort of gets at your operating system. It touches on the impact you've had in the world and in a way that's touched me. You work that you may keep pace with the soul of the earth. When you work, you are a flute through whose heart the whispering of the hours turns to music. When you work, you fulfill a part of Earth's furthest dream, assigned to you when that dream was born. And in keeping with yourself, with labor, you are in truth loving life. And to love life through labor is to be intimate with life's most innermost secret. For work is love made visible. Thank you, Reed. I'm grateful that you're in the world, and I'm grateful that you're in my world.
Thank you.
Come on down. That's great. That's good to see you. Wow, lots to take home tonight. Okay, 2 more awards. Next up is the Magical Team Award, and let's welcome Rob Papalardo of Dun & Bradstreet to come up and present that award. Rob?
Good evening. Thank you, Geoffrey. What an honor to be here with you all to introduce the Magical Team Award on behalf of Dun & Bradstreet. Understanding and respecting the power of relationships and innovation is embedded in our culture, and this award truly speaks to us. In any organization, every so often a team or division transcends expectations and manifests a sublime product or service that takes the world by storm. It could be as elegant as a great new design or an easier form of payment. It could also be a hands-free speaker you control with your voice that performs an astonishing range of tasks, from playing music and reading books to ordering products, answering questions, controlling lights, and is on the way to doing so much more. You didn't know you needed it, but now you can't imagine being without it. This year's Magical Team created such a product that is taking the world by storm. This team made the difference, and they absolutely nailed it. We're so pleased to be presenting the 2016 Magical Team Award to an amazing team for collaborative breakthroughs that resulted in an irresistible product. The 2016 Magical Team Churchill goes to the Amazon Echo team. Let's welcome key team members Mike George and Tony Reed, who will be joined on stage for a conversation with Tim O'Reilly. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you very much.
There you go.
Hey,
Congratulations. Thank you
very much. Good to see you, too.
Hi,
what a pleasure.
Oh, certainly, sir.
Great, thanks.
All right. I'm going to start out by asking how many of you here have an Echo? Oh,
Thank you.
Not enough of you. Seriously, this is really one of those rare game-changing products. You think you know about speech-enabled devices because you probably tried Siri, maybe you tried Google Now or Cortana, but they never quite nailed it. You know, and I thought when this came along, I thought, wow, it's going to be another, it'll be interesting and it'll be kind of nice to have in the kitchen. But I didn't realize that it would be an iPhone-like experience. You guys remember when you first got your first multi-touch enabled, phone, and every other device suddenly felt wrong, and you keep having that experience. At least I do with the Amazon Echo. It's totally changed my expectations of what a device should be, how a device should work. The fact that it's always listening, but perhaps more importantly, the thoughtfulness of the design. And I don't mean the physical design of the device or the insight that, hey, we never knew we needed a hands-free device in the kitchen until you got one of these things. And that's, I think, probably the entry point to the whole home. But really more that they have thought through the interactions so well. And I wrote a piece sort of giving a little bit of homage to an idea that we all talked about probably 10 years ago. What would Google do? Because Google was sort of the company that was showing us the new ways of Silicon Valley, data-driven, with unexpected insights. I wrote a piece called "What Would Alexa Do?" because I think Alexa is really showing us how to think about human-machine interface for the future. And I'm so pleased to be here with Mike and Tony, who I've just met tonight. And I'd love to talk with them a little bit about this really magical device. And I would just say it's not a very expensive device, and every one of you owes it to yourself to go home and order one, because it will change the future, and you will want to have been there earlier. You'll wish you had it already. So, but let me start. You just received this award for the magical team. And yet, when we met earlier and we're talking about this, I pressed you, who's responsible? Like, who's your Steph Curry? To speak of another magical team that we just heard about. And you're very slippery on the subject. And instead, you said, well, we have a process at Amazon. And so I'd love you to talk about that process,
Sure.
Because that seems to be what makes the products happen.
Okay. Jump in anytime you want. Sure. It starts with the first thing that Amazon is about. Our mission technically is to be the most customer-centric company on earth. That's actually the mission statement. And if you look at product development process, we get the kernel of an idea, and we think, can this be fundamentally different and more important for our customers? Is it something that could be game-changing and big? And can we do it? And then our process kicks in, our mechanisms kick in. We have a thing called working backwards. And we write the first thing we do when we get one of these ideas is we write a press release. We write a press release that ignores every single technical thing that we know we can't do. It's just aspirational. And we say, if we release this is the best possible thing we think we can do for our customers. And then we write FAQs. And we try to identify every question that we would receive if we issued that press release. And we answer those questions in an aspirational manner as well, ignoring every single technical hurdle we know about. And then we mock up every single customer-facing thing that we're going to build. And in some cases, we'll actually build things. And there's a team doing this, and we're in rooms, and we're debating things, and we have vice presidents, and we have entry-level software developers. One of our leadership principles is to have backbone, will disagree, then commit. So people in that room are bound to speak up if they think what we're building is not right for customers. So we'll have pretty interesting, unfiltered debates about what's right, and it doesn't matter what your stripes are. So, and then after that happens, if we're convinced that we've got it right, and we iterate until it's right, then we start to build.
So, in terms of getting it right, again, this is my sort of personal experience with the device. Part of getting it right involved sort of rethinking the interaction from the ground up. In this piece I wrote, I contrast talking to Google Now on my phone with talking to Alexa. And the thing that really strikes me is the completeness of the interactions. One of the examples I give, if I can say, Alexa, play Mozart, and then a moment later I can say, Alexa, it's playing a song, whatever, or playing a piece of music. And a moment later I say, Alexa, can you set a timer for 30 minutes? And then 10 minutes later I say, Alexa, how much time is left? And, I hear, 19 minutes and 34 seconds. It doesn't tell me how much time is left in the song. It knows that it goes with the timer. I tried that same experiment with Google, which is great. I mean, I have to say Google is a magnificent company, but I don't want to rag on them. But try that same experiment, and you say, "Okay, Google, play Jimi Hendrix, whatever, something from Google Play." Does that, and I say, "Okay, Google, set a timer." It does that, And then I say, okay, Google, how much time is left? And I'm told how much time is left via a Google search result till the heat death of the universe. Actually, I think actually it's the, sorry, I take it back. It's the amount of time that Earth has left in the habitable zone of the sun. But, it has no sense of context. Now, how did you get to that, kind of user experience concept that we go, we have to actually, complete the interaction because we're not done just launching a program. Right. Because, what my phone does is it just launches the timer or it launches, the play app, and then it's done. Whereas you guys are kind of listening like I'm still your attentive servant. And you obviously thought through these interactions. Can you talk a little bit about that, Tammy?
Yeah, there were two things to keep in mind when we started with this process. One, we were building Echo, the device that doesn't have a screen. Mm-hmm. And so we had to think about that in different ways than having a display and a visual cue. And the second part of it, which seems so simple, we just thought, what would a normal, polite human do in this instance? And so we thought a lot about these interaction models, and that is a question that we kept coming back to, which is what would we expect a human to do when I'm interacting with Alexa? And the example you had mentioned in the article, which is a good one, is what we call attenuation. And so for the music experience, when you are listening to music and then you barge in to ask Alexa a question or set a timer, you'll notice that the music turns down and it goes lower. And there was actually debate about that in the process, through this working backwards process that Mike talks about, because you can do that from an overall product idea, but then you can do them from a feature perspective. You can go very granular with that process. But we were concerned about the performance that attenuating the music would have on the speech recognition. And so a lot of testing goes into it and a lot of debates, and you have strong opinions and advocating on the behalf of what would customers expect. And in that case, we ended up with a great, delightful experience which is what a human would do. If I'm speaking to you and the music is too loud, most likely you will lean over, turn the volume down, and then you'll turn it back up once we're done conversing. And that's what Alexa will do.
Yeah, it's interesting because other devices, that, if I've got music playing and I interrupt, it just turns off entirely, which is sort of jarring. Mm-hmm. I think you've done that beautiful fit and finish. A lot of good design work. In that process, how long did this development process take?
We've been working on elements of this for years now. And, there are different pieces of it that have gone into the development process, not, including from the interaction design to the science. I mean, there are different pieces. We've talked about latency. One of the things that was very important to us from a product development perspective was to be fast. When you're speaking to each other, I'm not pausing and waiting 2, 3, 4 seconds to answer your question. And so for us, latency and the performance piece was critical to that experience. And we spent a lot of time on that as well. There's a lot of, the device is waking up when you say Alexa, the wake word. It is taking in the audio stream, it's streaming it to the cloud. We're processing that. We're trying to find the information. If you're asking for the weather, we're sending it back down to the device. That's a lot of stuff happening. Yeah. And it happens very quickly. So those are the pieces that sort of, when we went through phases of our product development process, some took longer than others.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the wake word. And this is really probably not relevant for this audience, but just because so many people have this fear, it's listening for the wake word. It's not listening for everything. Right.
That's right.
Because so many people go, I don't want that because it's going to be hearing everything. And it's like, no. It's just like touching your phone. It's not feeling you all the time just because it feels you when you touch it.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, so I think it's super important because this is a new paradigm. And certain people go, well, it could be hacked. I go, well, so could your phone, so could any microphone. So if you're worried about the security of it, it really is not any greater security risk than you already have carrying around a phone which has a microphone and a camera. But anyway, it's great success. Obviously, it's been a very successful consumer product. How does its rate of adoption compare to the Kindle?
I don't know exactly how to compare it. What we do know is that customers reacted positively quickly, and to the point that we got so many signals, we knew we were onto something meaningful. And right now, I think we have 28,000 5-star reviews, which I think is the most that we've seen. Mm-hmm. And when you read the reviews, it's also interesting. You see comical reviews. You also see about a third of the reviews referencing the word love. People really feel attached to this experience.
Yeah, I think that's true. It really is a beautiful product. But I don't want to keep raving about it. I want to ask you another question. Your previous hardware product, the Fire Phone, was an utter disaster.
We learned a lot.
Yeah. Yes. I remember reading that. Jeff laughed, it off in some remarks and said, "Well, we're working on even bigger, disasters now. Expect, we're a big company. We have to try big bets."
Right.
And you think was he referring to the risk here, or were there other things?
Oh, I think it started from the beginning. We were talking earlier about things that we've done that have gone well and some that haven't gone well. Mm-hmm. When we first started allowing third-party inventory onto Amazon, the retail site, we launched auctions.
Yeah,
we thought we were going to compete with eBay. And when it wasn't working, we thought, well, maybe it's the pricing mechanism. You have to compete for your purchase. So we'll create Z-shops. And that was a fixed-price marketplace. But we spent a lot of money on auctions, and then we built Z-shops. And then we realized people were all shopping in the retail store. We had the bookstore, but we had books and auctions and Z-shops. So why don't we take all that inventory and just put it on the same page with what we're selling? And so we went through a lot of investment, a lot of failure to get to the point where we launched Marketplace, which today is responsible for over 50% of our global unit volume. So I think this is another example. We have experiences we want to create. We have some very differentiated ideas. And we're willing to take a very long view on how long it's going to take us to get there.
So this is the Beautiful Teams Award. Is there any advice that you would have to people who want to build just this sort of the kind of success that you guys have found at Amazon?
I think what Mike talked about earlier is important, and you'll hear this a lot about Amazon, but it is something that we do live, which is starting from the customer and working backwards. And someone else had mentioned, customers are not great at telling you what they want, and that's true. And things that we look to do is we talk about inventing on the behalf of customers, and we look at ways to simplify what they're used to today. They may not know that there's a better way to do it. I mean, we don't know these things naturally. And so we push teams and we find ways to allow them to sort of think through and invent and simplify through this process. And it's a process that works. And even if you're in a small startup and you don't have to convince a lot of people of it, I think it's a very effective process to tease out, what do you really mean when you're talking about launching this feature, this product, this new business line, whatever it may be? And the FAQ process itself is also important. It teases out a lot of the stuff that you have to really think of. You have to think, what would customers ask if it's an end user, if it's a developer, customer, whomever it may be. And that process has worked very well for us. We've been using it for many, many years, and it's one that I think is kind of...
I'd like to echo something that was said earlier. I mean, you have to hire bar-raising talent. You can't settle. We spend a ton of our time every week just focused on recruiting the right people. And then once you get them in, you need to organize in a manner that gives them true ownership. So we look at this massive effort of ours and we say, how do we break it down into atomic pieces that we can then give people ownership over, and give them every resource they need to build and operate it like an independent business. And then we have technical principles that allow us to do that. And you let them run. And
all right.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're out of time. Good talk to you all night.
Well, thank you all, and thank you.
Thank
for
you
the
very
awards.
much.
Yes,
and
thank you.
I look forward to what comes next.
Thanks, Ken.
Okay, our final award of the evening is the Legendary Leader. Please welcome to the stage Bill Rue of GE Digital to present this award. Bill?
Thank you, Geoffrey. So I'm pretty stoked to give out the Legendary Leader Award. This is about inspirational leadership that allows organizations and people to innovate and create beyond their abilities. The winner today embodies the three key attributes the Churchill Club has asked in the nominee. They want someone who can see the future, look around corners, envision it. They want someone who has created leading market products and services that have changed the world. Lastly, they want someone who's created organization and talent that's built to last. Today's winner, oh, by the way, joined a $70 million company and took it to $47 billion. You know, I was fortunate, and I'm so excited to do this, to work for this individual for 8 years during a very formative part of my career. I learned so much from this individual, and it allowed me to go to GE and help to transform this company. I can remember a lot of things he said. One of my favorite was by the time it's obvious, it's too late. That's a pretty profound statement. The last thing on a personal note, to just give you a feel, many people feel this way about this individual. It's not just about leading a company, but the kind of person he is. And just to give you a personal touch to this, last week, and this happens to me all the time, last week I happened to be at the American Cancer Society benefit, and I was talking to the CEO of a startup, and I said I used to work for CISCO, and the person did what a lot of people do. Oh my God, I know John Chambers, and I love this guy. And he went on to tell me a story about mentoring and guidance that John has gone out of the way to give. And he said, I've been successful because of this. And I got to tell you, every time I mention this anywhere around the world, these are the stories I hear about this individual. I'm really proud today and honored to give the Legendary Leader Award to the Executive Chairman and the former CEO of CISCO Systems. Come on up here, John.
We all do it together.
Yeah, hang on just a second. Let me put it back in there in the back.
Got it?
Okay.
Okay.
Bill, thank you.
John.
It's an honor.
This is for you.
How did you ever get away from me? You know, it's never too late to change your mind.
Hey, he's on a mission. He's on a mission.
Thank you, Bill.
Spread the word. Spread the talent. Mm-hmm. Well, so it's my pleasure to have this interview, and John and I have known each other for a long time. When we think about leadership, I think Bill kind of called out the three elements, and I'm going to sort of structure our conversation around it. And the first one is, you know, when we're in the middle of cataclysmic change, getting oriented and trying to understand and see what's going on is a very big deal. When I first met John in the 90s, it was the internet. And people literally would fly American Airlines jets from all over the world to San Jose to call on CISCO to get a point of view. 20 years later, I would say that the word now is digital. That everybody gets that digital is that. Talk a little bit about your vision for digital and how you see that. And I know you talk to people all around the world about it. What are you seeing, and what's your vision there?
And Geoffrey, what I'll try to do is put my comments in a way that if you take one point away from tonight that changes how you think about your business or what you do in the future, I've accomplished my goal. And if you agree with everything I say, I've failed miserably because I want to challenge us a little bit. And I think you're a product of what you learn over time. I worked for IBM. We missed the transition to the mini computer and beyond. Worked for Wang. Missed the transition to the internet. And so when I saw the opportunity in the internet, and we said in the early 90s that CISCO and the internet was going to change the way the world works, lives, learns, and plays, everybody said, nice marketing, not a chance. But we quickly realized that this was an equalizer in life along with education. And while it wasn't going to equalize all the people in the world, it could dramatically change business first and then a lot of the world's population. And I think President Clinton, even though I'm a moderate Republican, he got it during the 90s, the transition that needed to be made. And he created during the 8 years of his administration, and we were on stage in the White House with him when we announced the Internet Air, and I was scared to death, and he was kind enough to let us be the business speaker at that. He created 22.5 million jobs in 8 years. If you can imagine, 18% growth in GDP. The median income went up 22%. What you're about to see with digitization, it will be more powerful than that by 3 to 5-fold. It literally will move from 1,000 things connected to the internet to 15 billion today to 500 billion in 15 years. Power of a network, number of units squared. And it will transform every country, every company, every business, every individual, every house, every car in ways that we're just beginning to imagine, and largely for the better. So you'll see in India set a goal of 1.3 billion people, dramatically increasing their per capita income per household, changing dramatically with Modi's leadership there, generating 1 million jobs a month, becoming a startup country, a startup direction. And you will suddenly see a France, which all of us would go to visit, a nice place to visit, have dinner, a nice tourist spot, become the startup nation in Europe. When we said that 2 years ago, people thought we were crazy. France, socialistic leadership. Guess what was the number 1 country in Europe in the first half of this year in terms of venture capital investments? 3 takeaways. First, $19 trillion, 1 to 3% GDP growth of every country in the world. Secondly, there is no entitlement. 40% of the companies in this room will completely disappear. True across the U.S., true around the world. This will be disruption, where you either disrupt or you be disrupted. But third, if done right, it has the ability to raise all boats in terms of every country and job creation. So digital to me is dramatically how things are going to change. And we're just literally in the first inning of it, Geoffrey.
Well, let me push it at something, because we're in the middle of a really, to me, very painful political dialogue in our country right now. I think monologue, a series of monologues. But the point about it is it's driven a lot by the fear of digitization and a large population that feels disenfranchised. How do you see digitalization in terms of that concern, and what would you maybe recommend in terms of that concern?
Well, first of all, I think we've got to outline what the opportunity is for our country. This is the startup nation. We've done it on a scale that others have not. We aren't doing it as fast as we used to, so we've got to change. I think it's very realistic over the next 8 years for whichever candidate wins to set a goal of 25 to 30 million jobs. To challenge again for GDP growth average of 4% a year, which is doable. India is going to grow 7 to 9%, and their well-run regions of 50 million people like in Andhra Pradesh will grow 12 to 15%. You've got to think like a startup. You've got to think out of the box, much like Joe articulated. You've got to set out a dream that most people consider impossible and then really go after it. And so what's happening in this political environment, instead of doing what America normally does, which is outline, write that press release, for me, play the chess game all the way to the end, understand all the whys in it, and don't take your first move on the chessboard till you're ready to do it. We're talking about global trade, and we're talking about how we protect ourselves. There is no protection from disruption. We are the only country in the world that does not have a major digitization plan. And you have countries that have traditionally not led, suddenly partnering with business and their citizens to completely transform. The downside, however, is if a nation gets left behind, if they fail to realize that 30 to 50% of what people have traditionally done will be replaced by robots and artificial intelligence, and if they don't quickly change their education system, I'm not talking about STEM, I'm talking about technology skills, not over multiple decades, but in the next decades, then you will leave behind a large part of your population. That's where we have to be careful in this valley. If we're not careful, and if we don't reinvent ourselves, not only can we go to the way of 128 in Boston, which used to be the high-tech center of the world, 1,000 high-tech companies, there's only one left. Or we can all of a sudden find ourselves where other industries have, where people view high-tech not as the champion of the rest of the world, but as a job destroyer. And I think we've got to come together on that pretty quickly. I do think also our nation needs to get back in the leadership role. We don't play well when we have fear.
Okay, so now I want to take it down a level because, okay, so those forces you described at the national level also can happen inside a single corporation.
Yes.
I've been spending a bunch of time with large corporations, and the struggle of large corporations to catch the next wave has been a big problem. So what if you think about driving innovation, as Bill said, the first time you were at CISCO, it was a $70 million company, you were riding your first big wave.
Yes.
But now you have to ride more than one wave, and there's forces that want to stay with the
I know where
old
you're
stuff,
going. Yeah.
and then they want to go on the new stuff, and it creates resource allocation and political problems and inertia inside the company. How do you deal with that kind of issue?
Well, I think that's where it's so important, and several of my colleagues tonight started with a vision and a strategy for where they want to go. Then as a CEO, you hire the management team to implement that. You change some of the players as well. You build a strong culture, and I didn't understand how important culture was. You've got to have a culture that thrives on where you're going to go, and you communicate your vision all the time. And so as you begin to think about how you do this, you have to have the courage to say you've got to think like a startup. You've got to think exponentially. You've got to not fall in love with a product or a technology, because the best product or technology often doesn't win. It's who executes the best. And so what we did at CISCO, we looked at catching market transitions and understanding those. And each time we caught a market transition going to the internet, routers originally, then switches, then voice, then video, then cloud, then digitization, we rode that wave to a new billion-dollar product every year in each category. And then we had the courage to say, we're going to integrate these products together. We're never going to enter markets, stole that from GE, unless we give you one or two, except for the 40% market share. And we would not only write our own press release, we'd play out the game to how we get that plus some. We've done it in 16 of the 18 major products. We integrated it together, and in so doing, we pulled away from our peers. You also have to understand that you do innovation, and most companies only innovate once, and then they tweak that one product. I think you've got to think about innovation as a whole replicatable process. And when I really began to understand this, what we did that perhaps our peers really struggled with is we created a replicatable process for every segment of innovation. So for acquisitions, which I had the good fortune to do 180 of them, and they'll always beat you up on the flip that doesn't work, and that's part of leadership. But we created a replicatable process that allowed us to move with tremendous speed. Yep. And something that I thought as a young entrepreneur, I thought process or bureaucracy, and boy, was I wrong. If you get a replicatable process for innovation, you can move at tremendous speed. I can get a call on a Thursday night, and we did, from somebody I very much respect in the Valley. They said, John, a company that you should be owning is going to be bought. 2 companies have been after him for 6 months. You've got to get over here and see that company. And he told me the name of the company. I said, what do they do? And I trusted the person so much, it sounded interesting. I sent my head of business development over the next morning. He called me in 2 hours and said, John, get over here. I went over, met the CEO, understood their business, had a handshake by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We had it through both board of directors. By Monday morning, we announced a $3.2 billion acquisition.
Wait, time out.
Speed of innovation.
Whoa.
But it's replicatable.
So how did you do that? No, seriously. How?
You build a replicatable process. You have your rules on what you do, etc. We did the same thing with product leadership. Rules of minimum 40% market share. We're usually closer to 55 or 60. We then bring those together in architectures, and we're always customer driven. No matter how much we fall in love with the technology, if our top customers, a Shell doesn't tell us to do this, or a GE doesn't tell us to do it, we just don't do it. Now, what you're about to see is a transition that we have to make or we'll get left behind, because merely doing products isn't going to have great margins in the future. It's how do you take those products, how do you take this digitization, which literally will affect every company regardless of size in the world, and how do you start focusing on outcomes? And you have to literally change your culture to do that. You've got to knock down the silos. You've got to talk about the economic benefit, and then you've got to do it at a speed that is suddenly breathtaking. As Jamie Dimon said from J.P. Morgan Chase, he said, get used to it. Silicon Valley's coming to every single industry in the world, and you've got to either lead or you get left behind.
So let me. One of the things that was kind of amazing, and there are a lot of things that CISCO did that I think set new understandings. We talked a little about M&A. One of the things you're famous for is the spin-in, spin-out idea. Just say a few words about where that came from and how that worked.
Sure. When you look at it, when we first did our first acquisition and we announced paying $92 million for a company with $10 million in revenue, my stock went down because they knew acquisitions didn't work. And long story short, that acquisition plus 2 other small ones generates today about $13 billion a year. So we realized we weren't going to be smarter than others. What we did was study while other mergers and acquisitions missed, and then we developed our golden rules of thumb, starting with the customers telling us who to buy, what features had to be changed, starting with we don't acquire a company with different cultures, because what you're acquiring when you acquire a tech company is different than if you're a financial institution. You're acquiring people and next-generation product. Different cultures don't make it happen. Yeah. So we develop a replicatable process on it, and then we just move with tremendous speed. We then tried to do internal startups, and candidly, the 1,000 rays of light just get killed. Yeah. And so we said, let's try a concept of taking some internal people, spin them out, have them build a company based, we will buy back in at a predetermined number, but only based on business results. And we did that 4 times. Each time generated the #1 product in the industry, billion-dollar markets remarkably quickly, average probably 50% type of market share. So it's innovation with different models. Now we're trying to do what I think all of us want to see in the Valley, which is how do you do innovation with a replicatable process in each segment of your business. And we'll stay tuned to see if we make that transition.
So just to close on that, was that the same team each 4 times? Was it the same team each time?
It was a subset of the same team. Yeah, they just knew how to do that.
And there was a personal relationship you had with them, I'm sure, that was part of, I mean, that's a very strong relationship of trust to do that.
During 20 years as CEO, I don't think I lost 5 people that it wasn't the right time for them to leave, or we weren't going to be able to achieve their aspirations at CISCO. We're very loyal. I know every illness of every employee in the company is life-threatening, their spouse or their children. We are there for them like no one else.
I remember.
Back to the corporate social responsibility that several of my colleagues tonight reverted to. Everywhere in the world, we're #1 in corporate social responsibility. We're #1 in market share. And if you watch, when we go into an environment, we don't go in to destroy jobs. We go in to create an ecosystem and a partnership with the countries in Europe, like a France, like a India, in a very unique way. And we understand their real concerns and aspirations, such as this digital world. If 30 to 50% of your jobs can be done by robotics and artificial intelligence, not only do we have to change education system remarkably quickly, but even the socialistic governments in a country like France or Germany said, we know this is inevitable, but you have to help us retrain our workforce. And all of a sudden you see a country saying, not only how do we train $1 million or $2 million a year on the internet capabilities, which is what we do at CISCO with the network academies, a country like France is saying we need to redo our education system. We need to make it very diverse. We've got to take these concepts and not only retrain 200,000 French men and women in a couple of years, we want you to think much larger, and we want you to take it into the equivalent of junior high. If it works in junior high with a pilot of 100,000 students, take it across all of France, then we go to India. Now, you know where I'm going with this. There is no entitlement. Our country has to kick into high gear here. Our businesses are doing pretty well with it, but our government hasn't even articulated a vision of how to do it, much less how do we go fix the education system. We in the Valley have to come together and say it's going to be disruption. If we don't think about how we get this education so every American has a chance to participate, and we talk 10 years from now with how did the average household grow 15 to 25% in terms of their income, we don't want to be talking about how 30 to 50% of the jobs went away in an environment.
We certainly don't. So last thing, we think about leadership. Well, when I think about leadership, I sort of think about it as a bucket brigade. People hand down lessons to us. We try to do what we can do, handing them down. As you look at either people that have handed down lessons to you or some thoughts you might want to hand down to the next generation, what comes to mind?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I would encourage each of us in the audience. It's a lesson that I learned kind of by accident. I've been crowdsourcing since I was born. And I was dyslexic, and I lots of times when I'd crowdsource, I'd get ideas and then articulate it, play the chess game out, etc. And so I was constantly learning from others. Ones that come to mind, Jack Welch, #1 and #2, not compete type of approach. And he also taught me a little bit of what I would articulate. You're more a product of your setbacks than you are as successes. That's definitely true for me. How I handled dyslexia, how a teacher, Mrs. Anderson, helped me through it, and how I took a weakness and made it a strength. In 2001, in the late 1990s, Jack said, John, you have a very good company. This is when we were on the border of being the most valuable company in the world. So I said, I'll bite, Jack. What does it take to have a great company? He said, a near-death experience. And I didn't get it. In 2001, I got it.
Wow.
And it was a near-death experience, which knocked us down, and CISCO could have completely disappeared, and the majority of our competitors did. They had market cap 2.5 times ours. We ended up being 2.5 times theirs, but we got crushed. At the end of 2001, I got a phone call from Jack, and I thought, uh-oh. I said, yes. And he said, John, you know I have a great company. I said, Jack, I'm getting the shit beat out of me. They're doubting about can we lead. Here's where we go. He said, John, no one else will tell you this, but this was your best leadership year. Oh, wow. I think each of us in this room will be more a product by how we handle those setbacks than the successes. And how did you learn from it and come back? Don't do the same mistake twice, but come back with the courage. Shimon Peres, he taught me for 15 years, and my heart is with him now at a time with his stroke, and I care greatly for the man. At 93 years old, he lectures to us when I have him to my house or an event about thinking like a 13-year-old, thinking out of the box in terms of the direction. Realize from the beginning that leadership will be lonely for every one of us in this room. And you learn from everybody. Again, I was taking notes tonight, and I'll finish them out, from all four of the other award winners. You have to constantly learn. My dad taught me how to play out the game thinking 10 or 15 years ahead of time. Both of them were doctors, my dad and my mom. My mom was internal medicine and psychiatry. She taught me the emotional side. My wife and my partner for 45 years, who is my high school sweetheart, has been amazing through the ups and the downs. And I want to just challenge us in the Valley. There is no entitlement going forward.
Yeah.
I think we're going to lead in this digitization, which will have 3 to 5 times the impact of the internet, which will grow economies 1 to 3%, but it will have tremendous disruption. We've got to think out of the box on how we make sure that we in high tech also understand the legitimate needs of society and everyone to participate in this, and think about it more like Modi does, as opposed to, well, people just have to get used to this. This is part of business. It is not. And we've got to change the education system and the philosophy we go forward.
Join me in thanking John Chambers.
Thank you.
Thank you. John, here's your award.
Thank you.
Go this way.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's great. So I want to just bring this to a close by just sharing a few thoughts. As John said, we were both taking a lot of notes during the thing, and I just want to kind of highlight a couple of my takeaways, at least from this evening. You know, starting with the Netflix thing and the culture of building a culture around these principles of freedom and responsibility, so that you keep the accountability, but you keep the thing moving, and then the courage. At that moment when they split the company and they had to actually take resources away from one area and put them into another, very unhappy challenge, but they stood up to it. And so freedom and responsibility always isn't just sweetness and light. It often demands more of us than maybe we want to give, but it's what it takes to make these successes real. Listening to the Warriors, one of the things Joe said that it would never occurred to me, he talked about the architecture of his team. And I thought, well, yeah, you can't build a house without a plan, but that kind of, and all of us live on teams, and having an architecture of a team, and then of course we had from Netflix. The guy said the hippo, right? The old way of making decisions. The highest paid person in the organization or in the room. Joe is clearly not a hippo. Joe is listening and making it work, and that I think that. And John talked a lot about the listening as well. Reed's formula, impact times number of people times time. It's a pretty clearly utilitarian formula, but thinking at scale, and you listen to John at the end tonight thinking about how much the world needs us to have impact at scale. We do scale well in this valley. Our comedian lever is what Reed called it. And, give me a lever in the right fulcrum, I can move the world. That's kind of the job, but that means you got to put the lever in the right place and think about the impact going forward. And he also talked about being in service to other people as a way of locating the fulcrum and locating the lever. Because if you put yourself in service to your own balance sheet, it just becomes too internally driven. If you find the way to be in service to the right things in the world, the ones that move you, it's great. And then the Echo team, which was fabulous, and Kevin, the beginning with the end in mind, going from the press release to the frequently asked questions and whatever. My last closing thought, and I've already warned Karen about this, it's pretty clear that next year that the Master of Ceremonies can and should be Alexa. So, thanks a lot. Take care. Good night.